right, everyone, get ready, because today we are going deep into mindfulness and meditation.
Oh, yeah.
We got a ton of YouTube videos from all kinds of people, like scientists and psychologists, even folks who, like, live and breathe this stuff.
Oh.
So I'm really excited to see what we can learn, maybe pick up some new techniques.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really amazing how much research is out there now, going way beyond just the, the touchy-feely stuff and really getting into the science of how mindfulness works.
Right.
Like, we're going to explore how these practices can literally rewire our brains, impacting everything from stress to relationships, and
it's like a whole,
it's pretty wild.
It's a whole world in there, right?
It is.
Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's make sure we're all on the same page about what mindfulness actually means.
Yeah, good idea.
It's become such a buzzword these days, but I'm hoping we can get a clearer picture. Dr. Tracy Marks, she's a psychiatrist. She had a pretty good definition in one of the videos we watched.
Oh, yeah. What did she say?
She described it as like paying attention to everything around you, your activities, even your own thoughts, but in a neutral way.
Yeah.
Without judging anything.
Yeah. So, like, just being present in the moment, not getting caught up in all that mental chatter and the judgments we usually make.
So it's not about emptying your mind completely.
Right.
Which is what I used to think.
Yeah, a lot of people think.
It's more about just noticing those thoughts and feelings without getting, like, swept away by it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like observing them, without getting all tangled up in them.
Right.
And Dr. Marks, she gave this really great example of mindful dishwashing.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, instead of just rushing through it thinking about a million other things, you really focus on the sensations.
Okay.
The warm water, the soapy bubbles, the feel of the plates.
I mean, that sounds kind of strange, but I get it.
It might sound a little weird, but it really highlights how mindfulness helps you shift your perspective.
Yeah, it's like instead of seeing it as a chore, it's more about the experience, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you're bringing awareness to the experience itself.
But how does that actually change our brains?
All right.
I keep hearing about neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure I really understand what that is.
Okay, so think of it this way. Your brain is constantly changing and adapting based on what you experience.
Okay.
It's not some fixed, static thing.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you learn something new, every time you do something different, you're essentially rewiring your brain.
Oh, wow. So our brains are, like, always under construction.
Exactly. Yeah, always evolving.
That's pretty cool.
And meditation, it's like a targeted workout for your brain. The more you practice, the stronger those neural pathways become, the ones associated with attention, focus, emotional regulation.
All right. So I'm starting to see how this all fits together.
Yeah.
But are there, like, real tangible benefits,
Mm-hmm.
Is there actual science to back this up?
There's a lot of research, actually. Sarah Lazar, she's a neuroscientist at Harvard. She's done some amazing work in this field.
Okay.
Her studies show that people who meditate regularly, their cortex is thicker.
Wait, hold on. You're saying meditation can actually make your brain thicker?
Yeah, it's the outer layer of the brain, the cortex. It's responsible for higher level functions, and it's thicker in meditators.
So, like, physically thicker?
Physically thicker.
That is wild.
I know, right?
Okay, so maybe it's like a fountain of youth for the brain?
And they've seen this in people of all ages, not just young people.
Oh, wow.
Even folks in their 40s and 50s,
So it's not just, for the young folks?
No, not at all.
Okay, I'm definitely paying attention now.
Yeah.
This is getting interesting.
But it gets even better, because Lazar, she also did a study with beginners, people who had never meditated before.
Okay, now we're talking.
Yeah, so this is where it gets relatable. After just 8 weeks of practice, their brains showed some really remarkable changes.
Okay, what happened?
They had more volume in their hippocampus.
The what?
The hippocampus.
Okay.
It's this area of the brain that's super important for memory and learning.
Okay.
And they also had increased volume in the temporal-parietal junction, which is linked to empathy and compassion.
Okay.
And here's the kicker. They actually had less volume in their amygdala, which is the brain's fear center.
Oh, okay.
So basically, even a little bit of meditation can make you less fearful and more compassionate.
I'm starting to see why this is so popular.
Yeah, right.
But how does this fit into the bigger picture of a healthy mind?
That's where Richard J. Davidson comes in.
Okay.
He's this neuroscientist who's been studying meditation for decades. And he has this framework that he calls the 4 pillars of a healthy mind.
4 pillars.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm listening.
All right, so the first one is awareness. like being able to focus and resist distractions.
Mm-hmm.
The second is connection, which is about having positive relationships and being kind and compassionate.
Okay.
Then there's insight, which is about understanding your own mind and your habits.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, there's purpose, having a sense of meaning and direction.
Those are all great, but they sound, kind of hard to achieve.
They're definitely goals to work towards.
Especially with all the distractions and information overload these days.
Exactly. And that's why Davidson argues that we're often not even aware of the forces that are shaping our minds,
Right.
And we have very little control over them.
That's kind of scary.
It is, but mindfulness gives us that awareness, that control.
So it's like we're finally taking charge of our own minds,
Exactly, like becoming the architects of our own mental landscape.
Now that's empowering.
It is, and the best part is you don't need any special equipment or hours of free time to get started.
Right.
Even just a few minutes a day can make a difference.
Okay, I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
I'm ready to hear about some of these practical techniques.
Okay, so one simple thing Dr. Marks suggests is bringing awareness to your senses while you're doing everyday tasks.
Okay.
Like showering, eating, or even just walking,
Right.
Instead of letting your mind race ahead, really tune into the physical sensations.
So it's about turning those everyday things into mindfulness exercises.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a way to sneak in some practice throughout the day.
I could see how that would be helpful.
Yeah.
And another technique is focusing on your breath.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic.
Right.
Yeah, during those little pauses in your day, like when you're waiting at a traffic light or standing in line, just take a few deep breaths.
I can picture myself doing that, like taking a deep breath instead of checking my phone for the 100th time.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I could use more of that.
We all could.
Those little moments can really add up, huh?
They do. They really do.
This is all great, but I'm curious to hear more about the benefits. We touched on them a little bit, but I want to delve deeper into how mindfulness can actually help with things like stress and anxiety, even physical health.
Right.
Where should we start?
Well, stress is a good place to start.
Okay, yeah.
It's something we all experience, and it can have a huge impact on our well-being.
Absolutely, yeah.
Chronic stress has been linked to everything from heart disease to depression.
Yeah, I definitely feel the effects of stress in my own life. It's hard to switch off even when I'm not working.
Right.
But what I find interesting about mindfulness is that it's not about, eliminating stress altogether.
No.
It's more about changing how we relate to it.
Exactly. It's about managing stress more effectively, building resilience so it doesn't overwhelm us.
Okay, so how does mindfulness actually help us do that?
Well, mindfulness practices like meditation and deep breathing, they can shift our nervous system from a state of fight or flight to a state of rest and digest.
Oh, yeah.
It's like flipping a switch in our brains.
So it's not just about thinking positive thoughts or trying to ignore the stress?
Right. It's about creating actual physiological changes in our bodies.
That's fascinating.
And over time, mindfulness can help us develop a greater sense of equanimity.
What's that?
It means being able to stay calm and centered, even in the midst of challenges.
Oh, that sounds incredibly valuable.
It is.
Especially in today's world,
Yeah, everything's so fast-paced and demanding.
What about anxiety? Does mindfulness have a similar impact?
Well, anxiety often comes from worrying about the future or dwelling on the past, right?
Yeah.
And mindfulness helps us ground ourselves in the present moment, which can really reduce those anxious thoughts.
Okay.
It's about focusing on what's happening right now, not getting caught up in those what-ifs.
That makes sense, but isn't it hard to stay in the present moment when your mind is racing with worries?
It can be tough, but that's where practice comes in.
Yeah.
It's like training a muscle.
Yeah.
The more you engage in mindfulness practices, the better you become at noticing those anxious thoughts without getting carried away by them. You learn to just observe them, kind of like they're passing clouds in the sky.
That's a helpful image.
Yeah.
So it's not about suppressing those thoughts, but more about changing how we relate to them.
Exactly.
Okay. But let's move beyond just the mental benefits for a second.
Okay.
You mentioned earlier that mindfulness can also impact our physical health.
Right.
What did you mean by that?
Well, there's more and more evidence that mindfulness can have a positive impact on all sorts of things.
Like what?
Like, studies have shown that it can lower blood pressure, reduce inflammation, improve sleep quality,
Wow.
and even boost our immune system.
So it's a true mind-body connection.
Exactly.
But how does simply paying attention to the present moment lead to such big changes in our physical well-being?
It's all about reducing stress
Okay.
and promoting relaxation.
Mm-hmm.
When we're stressed out all the time, our sympathetic nervous system is in overdrive.
Right.
And that can lead to all sorts of negative effects like inflammation, hormonal imbalances, and a weakened immune system.
So mindfulness is like hitting the brakes on that stress response.
Precisely.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here.
Yeah.
But there's also this idea of self-compassion,
Oh, yeah, that's important.
which is not just about being mindful of our external experiences, but also about being kind to ourselves.
Exactly.
I've heard that term before, but I'm not sure I fully get it.
Think of it as treating yourself with the same kindness you would offer to a good friend.
Okay.
It's about acknowledging your struggles without judging yourself
Right.
and recognizing that you're worthy of love and support even when you make mistakes.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's like giving yourself a break.
Exactly.
And I can see how that would tie into mindfulness, especially when we're dealing with tough emotions or situations.
Yeah, instead of beating yourself up, you offer yourself compassion.
Right, right.
And research has shown that self-compassion can really help with stress, anxiety, and depression.
That's amazing.
It is. And it can also increase feelings of happiness, resilience, and self-worth.
It sounds like self-compassion is a key ingredient in this whole mindfulness thing.
It is. And one of the videos we watched talked about a specific meditation technique for cultivating self-compassion.
Oh, interesting.
It's called loving kindness meditation.
Okay.
And it involves directing feelings of love and kindness toward yourself and others.
I've heard of that, but is it really that effective?
There's a lot of research that suggests it can have a big impact on our emotional well-being.
Okay.
It's been shown to increase empathy, compassion, and social connection.
Wow.
It can even reduce symptoms of PTSD and chronic pain.
That's incredible. I'm definitely going to look into that.
Yeah, it's a good one.
So, all of this mindfulness stuff, it kind of challenges our ideas about how our minds work.
It does. It really does.
Remember that concept of selfing that Dr. Vago talked about in his TEDx talk?
Yes, that was a good one.
That really stuck with me, but I'm still not quite sure what it means.
Well, it's about recognizing that our sense of self isn't fixed, It's constantly changing based on our experiences, our thoughts, our choices.
So it's like we're always constructing and reconstructing our identities.
Exactly. We're much more fluid and adaptable than we might think.
That's pretty profound.
It is.
And so mindfulness helps us become more aware of that process.
Exactly. By becoming more aware of our thoughts and feelings as they come up, we start to understand how they shape our sense of self.
And then we can choose which ones we want to cultivate and which ones we want to let go of.
Right. It's like we're becoming the editors of our own internal narratives.
I like that. That's really empowering.
It is.
So it's not just about being a victim of our circumstances or our genes.
Right.
We have the power to shape our own minds and experiences.
Absolutely.
This is all so fascinating, but I'm also curious about the practical side of things,
Yeah.
We've talked about a few techniques like mindful breathing and loving kindness meditation, but what other practices do you think would be helpful for our listeners?
Well, there's so many different mindfulness techniques out there. It's really about finding what works for you and fits into your life.
Mm-hmm.
But a few that come to mind are body scan meditation, walking meditation, and mindful eating.
Okay, tell me more about those.
Sure. So body scan meditation is all about becoming more aware of your physical sensations.
Okay.
It involves systematically bringing your attention to different parts of your body, noticing any sensations that arise, but without judgment.
I've heard of that, but I've never actually tried it.
It's really simple.
Do you have to lie down, or can you do it sitting up?
You can do it either way.
Okay.
The key is to find a comfortable position where you can relax and focus on your internal experience.
Okay.
You might start by bringing your attention to your toes, noticing any sensations of warmth, tingling, pressure, or tightness.
Mm-hmm.
And then you slowly move your attention up through your body, spending a few moments with each body part.
That sounds really relaxing.
It is.
And I can see how it would be good for stress reduction.
Absolutely.
You're basically checking in with your body, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and noticing any areas where you might be holding tension.
And it can also help you develop a greater sense of embodiment.
What's that?
It's like feeling connected to your physical self.
Oh, yeah, I get that.
Okay, what about walking meditation?
That one might sound a little strange.
Yeah, because usually meditation is about being still, right?
Exactly. But with walking meditation, it's not about walking to get somewhere or to exercise.
What?
It's about bringing mindful awareness to the act of walking itself.
Mm.
So you might find a quiet place where you can walk back and forth for a few minutes.
Okay.
And as you walk, pay attention to the sensations of your feet contacting the ground, the movement of your legs, the rhythm of your breath.
So you're basically turning an everyday activity into a mindfulness practice.
Exactly, yeah.
I like that.
It's more accessible than sitting on a cushion for hours trying to empty your mind. Right.
Right.
And you might be surprised by how much you can learn about yourself through walking meditation. You might notice habitual patterns of tension in your body or repetitive thoughts that keep popping up.
Okay, so you're still being mindful, even though we're moving.
Exactly.
What about mindful eating?
Mindful eating is all about bringing your full attention to the experience of eating.
Okay.
Savoring each bite, noticing the flavors, textures, and aromas of your food.
So it's the opposite of like mindless snacking while you're watching TV.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of that.
It's so easy to do these days.
Right.
But when you eat mindfully, you're really present with your food.
Okay, but how do you actually do that?
Well, one helpful tip is to put away all distractions.
By phone.
Yeah, your phone, the TV, anything that might pull your attention away from your food.
Okay.
And then just focus on the meal in front of you.
Mm.
Take a moment to appreciate how it looks, the colors, the arrangement.
Right.
And then as you take each bite, chew slowly and deliberately, paying attention to the sensations in your mouth.
I can see how that would help you slow down and really enjoy your food.
Yeah.
And maybe even prevent overeating.
Absolutely, because you're more aware of your body's signals of hunger and fullness.
Right. And it can also help you develop a healthier relationship with food.
Exactly.
Okay, this is all great, but what about those times when our minds are just racing and we can't seem to focus?
Well, distraction is normal.
Yeah.
Our minds are wired to wander.
Right.
The key is to notice when your mind has wandered without judgment and gently guide it back to the object of your focus.
Okay, so it's like training a puppy.
Exactly. With patience and persistence, you can teach your mind to stay present.
But what about those days when we just don't feel like meditating or practicing mindfulness?
Yeah, I get that.
Any tips for staying motivated?
I think it's about finding what works for you.
Okay.
Experiment with different techniques and times of day. Maybe you prefer a guided meditation app.
Right.
Or maybe walking in nature feels more grounding.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to explore and adapt your practice to fit your needs.
So there's no right or wrong way to do it.
Exactly. It's about finding what resonates with you and brings you a sense of peace and presence.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here,
We have.
but I'm wondering if there are any resources you recommend for people who want to learn more.
Oh, there are tons of great resources out there.
Like what?
Well, for books, I'd recommend Mindfulness for Beginners by Jon Kabat-Zinn. It's a classic.
Okay.
And wherever you go, there you are. Also by Jon Kabat-Zinn, and The Mindful Way Through Depression by Mark Williams, John Teasdale, Zindel Segal, and Jon Kabat-Zinn.
That's a mouthful.
It is, but it's a great book.
Okay, and what about apps?
Oh, yeah. Apps like Headspace and Calm are great.
I've heard of those.
They offer a wide variety of guided meditations and mindfulness exercises.
Fantastic. We'll be sure to include links to all of those resources in our show notes.
Great.
But as we wrap up this first part of our deep dive, what's the one message you hope our listeners will take away?
I would say this. Mindfulness is a journey, not a destination.
I like that.
There will be ups and downs, moments of deep clarity, and times when your mind feels like a runaway train.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
But the key is to approach your practice with a sense of curiosity, kindness, and non-judgment.
Okay.
Embrace the process, celebrate the small victories, and remember that even a few minutes of mindful awareness each day can make a big difference.
Beautifully said, and thank you for joining us on this journey.
My pleasure.
We'll be back soon with part 2 of our deep dive into mindfulness and meditation, so stay tuned.
All right, so where were we?
Oh yeah, we were just about to dive into the specific benefits of mindfulness.
Right, like how it can actually help with, real life stuff.
Exactly, like stress, anxiety, all that good stuff.
Okay, well, let's start with stress.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something we all deal with, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And it can really mess with our well-being.
Big time.
Like chronic stress, it's been linked to so many health problems, heart disease, even depression.
Yeah, I know. I feel it. Like even when I'm not working, it's hard to just, turn it off.
I hear you.
But what's interesting about mindfulness is that it's not about like pretending the stress isn't there.
No, definitely not.
It's more about changing how we react to it.
Exactly. It's about managing it better, building up that resilience so it doesn't totally take over.
Okay, so how does mindfulness actually help us do that?
Well, think about it. When we practice mindfulness, whether it's meditation or deep breathing, it actually shifts our nervous system
Okay.
from that fight or flight mode to a more relaxed state.
Oh, interesting.
It's like flipping a switch in our brains.
So it's not just like wishful thinking. It's actually changing our physiology.
Exactly, yeah.
That's wild.
And over time, with consistent practice, mindfulness can help us develop a greater sense of equanimity.
Wait, what's equanimity again?
It basically means being able to stay calm and centered, even when things are tough.
Oh, right. I remember.
Yeah, it's like, not letting the chaos get to you.
Yeah. That's definitely something I could use more of.
Don't we all?
Okay, so what about anxiety?
Anxiety, right?
Does mindfulness help with that too?
Yeah, well, think about it. Anxiety often comes from worrying about the future or dwelling on the past, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Mindfulness helps us focus on the present moment,
Okay.
which can really help quiet those anxious thoughts.
Yep, that makes sense.
It's about being here now, not getting caught up in all the what-ifs.
Easier said than done, though, right?
Oh, definitely.
Like, how do you stay present when your mind is just, like, racing?
It takes practice, that's for sure.
Right.
But it's like anything else. The more you do it, the better you get at it.
Yeah.
You start to notice those anxious thoughts without getting swept away by them. It's like, you see them, but you don't engage with them.
Okay, so you're not suppressing the thoughts. You're just, like, observing them.
Exactly. Yeah, like they're clouds passing by.
I like that analogy.
Okay. But let's talk about the physical benefits, too.
Oh, yeah, we touched on that earlier.
Right. So mindfulness isn't just good for our minds. It can actually impact our physical health, too.
In what way?
Well, there's growing evidence that it can help with all sorts of things.
Okay.
Lowering blood pressure, reducing inflammation, improving sleep, even boosting our immune system.
Wow, that's impressive.
It is. It's like this mind-body connection,
Yeah, but how does just paying attention to the present moment do all that?
Well, think about it. When we're stressed out, our bodies are in this constant state of fight or flight.
Right.
And that takes a toll,
Yeah.
It can lead to inflammation, hormonal imbalances, all sorts of problems.
So mindfulness is like hitting the pause button on that stress response.
Exactly. It gives our bodies a chance to, rest and recover.
That makes sense.
And this is where self-compassion comes in, too.
Oh, yeah, right. Self-compassion.
It's not just about being mindful of what's happening around us.
Mhm.
It's about being kind to ourselves, too.
Right, but I still kind of struggle with that concept, to be honest.
I get it. It's not always easy.
Yeah.
But think of it this way. Would you talk to a good friend the way you sometimes talk to yourself?
Probably not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So self-compassion is about treating yourself with that same kindness and understanding.
Okay.
It's about acknowledging your struggles without judgment and recognizing that you're worthy of love and support, even when you mess up.
I like that.
Yeah, it's like giving yourself a break,
Definitely.
And research shows that self-compassion can actually help with stress, anxiety, depression.
Wow, really?
It is. And it can also increase feelings of happiness, resilience, self-worth.
It sounds like self-compassion is a pretty important part of this whole mindfulness thing.
It is. It really is.
Okay, so we've talked about a few different techniques like mindful breathing,
Right.
loving kindness, meditation.
Mm-hmm.
But are there any other practices that you think would be helpful?
Oh, yeah, there are so many.
Okay.
It's really about finding what works for you, But a few that come to mind are body scan meditation, walking meditation, and mindful eating.
Okay, tell me more about those.
So body scan meditation is all about, like tuning into your physical sensations.
Okay.
It's about systematically bringing your attention to different parts of your body.
Okay.
Noticing any sensations that come up without judging them.
So it's like a full body check-in.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And you can do it lying down or sitting up.
Okay, go ahead.
It's really about finding a comfortable position where you can relax and just like focus inward.
Okay.
You might start with your toes, for example.
Okay.
Just notice any sensations there, maybe warmth, tingling, pressure, tightness,
Yeah.
And then you slowly move your attention up through your body, spending a few moments with each part.
I can see how that would be really relaxing.
It is. It's very grounding.
And you're saying it helps with embodiment too.
Right. It's about feeling more connected to your physical self.
Okay, and then there's walking meditation.
Right. Which sounds a little odd, right?
Yeah, because usually meditation is about being still.
Exactly. But with walking meditation, it's not about, getting exercise or reaching a destination.
Right.
It's about bringing that mindful awareness to the act of walking itself.
Okay, so how does that work?
Well, you might find a quiet place where you can walk back and forth, even just for a few minutes. And as you walk, just pay attention to the sensations, your feet on the ground, the movement of your legs, the rhythm of your breath.
So you're turning an everyday activity into a mindfulness practice.
Exactly, yeah.
I like that.
And it can be surprisingly insightful, too.
In what way?
Well, you might notice things like habitual tension in your body or, certain thoughts that keep popping up.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's like bringing that mindfulness to something we usually do on autopilot.
Okay, and then the last one you mentioned was mindful eating.
Right, mindful eating.
Yeah.
So this is all about really savoring the experience of eating.
Okay.
Paying attention to the flavors, the textures, the aromas.
So not just like shoving food in your face while you're watching TV.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the opposite of mindless eating.
Yeah, I definitely need to work on that.
It's so easy to fall into those habits,
It is.
But when you eat mindfully, it's like you're really present with the food.
Okay, so how do you actually practice mindful eating?
Well, one thing you can try is to put away all distractions like your phone or the TV.
Okay.
And just focus on the meal in front of you. Take a moment to really appreciate how it looks, the colors, the arrangement.
Right.
And then as you take each bite, chew slowly, deliberately.
Okay.
Pay attention to the sensations in your mouth.
So it's about slowing down and really experiencing the food.
Yeah, and it can also help you tune into your body's signals of hunger and fullness.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, it can prevent overeating.
Right.
And it can also help you develop a healthier relationship with food overall.
So we've talked about a lot of different techniques and practices.
Yeah, we have.
But what about those times when, our minds are just racing and we can't seem to focus?
Distraction is totally normal.
Yeah, it happens to the best of us.
Our minds are wired to wander,
Yeah.
The key is to just notice when it's happened without judgment and gently bring your attention back.
Right.
Imagine you're training a puppy.
Yeah.
You have to be patient and persistent.
Right. But sometimes it's hard to even find the motivation to practice mindfulness.
I know, I hear you.
Any advice for those days when you just, don't feel like it?
I think it's about finding what works for you.
Okay.
Experiment with different things, different times of day. Maybe you prefer a guided meditation app, or maybe you find it more grounding to walk in nature.
Right. So it's about finding what resonates with you.
Exactly. There's no one right way to do it.
I like that.
It's about finding what brings you that sense of peace and presence.
Okay, so before we wrap up this deep dive, do you have any resources you'd recommend for people who want to learn more?
Oh, yeah. There are so many great books and apps out there.
Like what?
Well, for books, Mindfulness for Beginners by Jon Kabat-Zinn is a classic.
Right.
And then there's Wherever You Go, There You Are, also by Jon Kabat-Zinn. And The Mindful Way Through Depression by Mark Williams, John Teasdale, Zindel Segal, and Jon Kabat-Zinn.
Wow, that's a lot of authors.
It is, but it's a really good one.
Okay, and for apps, you mentioned Headspace and Calm earlier.
Yeah, those are both great.
Cool. We'll make sure to link those in the show notes.
Perfect.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into mindfulness and meditation, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from all of this?
I would say this. Mindfulness is a journey, not a destination.
I like that.
There will be good days and bad days, times when it feels easy and times when it feels really hard.
Right. That's life, right?
Exactly. But the key is to approach it with a sense of curiosity, kindness, and non-judgment. Embrace the process. Celebrate the small wins, and remember that even a few minutes of mindfulness each day can make a huge difference in your life.
That's a great message. I love that.
Good. I'm glad.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. It's been a really enlightening conversation.
My pleasure. I enjoyed it.
And to all our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep practicing, and we'll see you next time.